And here is the reconstruction of Chatterman, and as we can see, he is dark or black skinned and his hair is black and curly, but he does have blue eyes. And he is an ancient Briton. Again, his body was found in the British Isles, and he would represent one of the most ancient and earliest Briton populations. And he's also the ancestor of the modern British population as well. With that being said, all ancient human populations were dark or black skinned over 8,000 years ago. It doesn't really matter where you were on the planet, whether it's Europe with Chatterman, or Scandinavia, or even the Levant with the Natufians, or North Africa with the Ibero-Maurusians. All humans were very dark skinned over 8,000 years ago. Therefore, by default, you can make the argument and say that the ancestors of Semitic populations would be dark to black skinned. White skin or light skin is fairly recent in terms of human history, only coming into existence about 8,000 to 7,000 years ago. According to the article titled How Europeans Evolved to Have White Skin, starting around 8,000 years ago. Europeans have not always been light-skinned, and Caucasians are in fact a fairly new development on the continent, relatively speaking. According to a new study reported in Science magazine, it has been found that Caucasians are the product of a patchwork of evolution in different places across Europe, while scientists have discovered 3 genes that produce light skin, both of which have played a part in the lightening of Europeans' skin color over the past 8,000 years. Since researchers began to sequence the genome of ancient populations last year, it has been discovered that Europeans today are the product of hunter-gatherers and farmers of at least 3 ancient populations having mixed together during their migration to the continent over the past 8,000 years. By comparing key parts of DNA across the genomes of 83 ancient humans from European archaeological sites with recent ones from the 1000 Genomes Project, Ian Mathinson of Harvard University Lab of Population and geneticist David Reich discovered the genes linked to skin pigmentation that had survived the natural selection process across Europe. With that being said, all humans were dark-skinned at some point, all of our ancestors. So by default, the ancestors of Semites were most definitely dark to black skinned, whether you believe in an old Earth or young Earth. But now the question we have to ask ourselves is this: did early Semitic populations remain dark-skinned like their ancestors? Let's begin with the Natufians, since they are the closest ancestors to Proto-Semites. Natufians lived in the Levant during the Mesolithic and Neolithic, and they clearly looked African. Reconstruction of a Mesolithic Natufian man based on the Jericho skull excavated in Israel. Ancient DNA analysis of Natufian samples has revealed that they were ancestral to the Levantine Neolithic population, forebears of the contemporary Semitic-speaking groups of the Middle East. So again, Natufians are located in the Levant, and they are the ancestors of Semites, and we have a clear description and depiction of them. Now, where is the origin of light skin? Light skin originated with Caucasus hunter-gatherers in western Georgia of the Caucasus. According to the paper titled Upper Paleolithic Genomes Reveal Deep Roots of Modern Eurasians, and it reads, to explore further, we looked at genotypes in 2 pigmentation genes proposed to have been strongly selected in the ancestors of modern Europeans, namely SLC45A2 and SLC24A5. Selected SNPs in the SLC45A2 and SLC24A5 genes. contributed to lightening of skin and are almost fixed in modern Europeans. We found that Katos and Serbia have the ancestral version of the SLC45A2 variant, but both Caucasus hunter-gatherers have the selected version of the SLC24A5 gene, encompassed by the most commonly associated haplotype C11 found in modern populations. So light skin originated in the Caucasus, with Caucasus hunter-gatherers in western Georgia. The alleles for light skin was carried across Eurasia by Yamnaya Proto-Indo-Europeans. According to the article titled Ancient DNA Reveals How Europeans Developed Light Skin and Lactose Intolerance, the Bronze Age around 3000 through 1000 BC was a time of major advances, and whenever one culture developed a particular advantageous set of technologies, they became able to support a larger population and to dominate their neighbors. The study found that the geographical distributions of genetic variations at the beginning of the Bronze Age looked very different to today's, but by the end it looked pretty similar, suggesting a level of migration and replacement of peoples not seen in Western Eurasia since. One people that was particularly important in the spread of both early Bronze Age technologies and genetics were the Yamnaya. With a package of technologies including the horse and the wheel, they exploded out of the Russian and Ukrainian steppe into Europe, where they met the local Neolithic farmers. Interestingly, the cultures with the most individuals with these mutations were the Yamnaya and their descendants. These results suggest that the mutation may have originated in the steppe and entered Europe with the Yamnaya, a combination of natural selection working on this advantageous trait and the advantageous Yamnaya culture passed down alongside it could then have helped it spread, although this process still had far to go during the Bronze Age. This significant study has left us with a much more detailed picture of Bronze Age Europeans. They had the light skin and range of eye colors we know today. So light skin originated in the Caucasus of western Georgia, then it was passed along to the Yamnaya in the Pontic Steppe of modern-day Russia and Ukraine, and was spread throughout Eurasia from the Pontic Steppe. With that being said, where is the origin of Semites? According to the book titled In Hot Pursuit of Language in Prehistory, it reads, "This paper makes an additional inference since there is archaeological and physical anthropological reason to believe that the Natufians were related to modern Semitic-speaking peoples of the Levant." And according to Cambridge University, it reads, "Given the modern distribution of Semitic languages over the area in question, which belong to the larger Afro-Asiatic family, it seems appropriate to suggest that these first farmers of the Levant and their Mesolithic predecessors, including the Natufian culture, were speaking a Proto-Afro-Asiatic language. It may be that Proto-Semitic continued to develop within the Levant and Syria area, since both Abelites and Akkadian, early Semitic languages, are there attested early, the former around 2400 BCE. And according to the paper titled Bayesian Phylogenetic Analysis of Semitic Languages identifies an early Bronze Age origin of Semitic in the Near East, and it reads, "We use Bayesian phylogenetic methods to elucidate the relationships and divergence dates of Semitic languages, which we then related to epigraphic and archaeological records to produce a comprehensive hypothesis of Semitic origins and dispersals after the divergence of ancestral Semitic from Afro-Asiatic in Africa. We estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin approximately 5,750 years before present in the Levant, followed by an expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia." So Semites, who are the descendants of Natufians, have their origins in the Levant. Now let's visualize both the migration of the Proto-Indo-Europeans from the steppe, and let's visualize the migration of Semites from the Levant. It's important to note the origin and migration patterns of both Proto-Indo-Europeans and Proto-Semites to see if Proto-Semites would have had the admixture with groups with the lighter skin allele. I would say that the earliest Semitic populations, the Proto-Semitic populations, likely wouldn't have been white-skinned or European-looking, and this is for several reasons. The light-skinned allele originated in a completely separate location from Semites. The origins and homeland of Proto-Semites was in the Levant in 4000 BCE. The origins of light-skinned allele was in the northern Caucasus. Furthermore, Proto-Indo-Europeans were in the northern Caucasus in 3000 BCE. The Yamnaya spread light skin throughout Eurasia. The Yamnaya didn't penetrate the Levant in 4000 BC when Semites existed. As a matter of fact, Proto-Semites predate the Proto-Indo-Europeans at least by 1,000 or 500 years. But the main takeaway is this: the light-skinned allele was nowhere near where Proto-Semites lived. The light-skinned allele was in the Caucasus and Ukraine, whereas Proto-Semites were in the Levant. And furthermore, it was Proto-Indo-Europeans that spread the light-skinned allele, not Semitic populations. And the light-skinned allele was spread from Russia and Ukraine, not the Levant. And again, it was specifically spread by Indo-European speakers, not Afro-Asiatic or Semitic speakers. Therefore, with all of that being said, I would say based on the location of the origin of light skin and the migration patterns of the carriers with light skin, which are the Yamnaya from the Pontic Steppe in 3000 BCE, also based on the origin of Proto-Semites in the Levant in 4000 BCE, and them migrating from the Levant towards Mesopotamia, basically from the south to the north, I would say that the earliest Semitic populations in their homeland of the Levant would not have been light-skinned, but remained darker-skinned like their Natufian ancestors. The movement of light skin would have been from the north to the south because it originated in the Caucasus and in Ukraine, whereas Semites are migrating from the south to the north, from the Levant in the south to the north in Mesopotamia. Therefore, it's a completely opposite migration pattern. With that being said, groups with the light-skinned allele likely encountered dark-skinned Middle Eastern Semitic populations in Mesopotamia in the early Bronze Age around 3000 BCE, as northern groups from the Caucasus and Iran migrated southwards. So I'm not ruling out the fact that there would have been contact between these two groups at some point in time. Northern groups carrying the light-skinned allele definitely encountered dark-skinned Semites, likely in the early Bronze Age. But again, my focus is more so on the earliest Semitic populations. But what's interesting about this contrast of northern groups having light skin and speaking Indo-European languages, and Middle Eastern groups being dark-skinned and speaking Semitic languages, is that it truly mirrors the interpretation that Japheth settled the north and cold parts of the world and is light-skinned and the father of Indo-Europeans, whereas Shem settled the warm parts of the earth and is dark-skinned and is the father of Semites. According to the book of Jubilees chapter 8, this is the land which came forth for Japheth, a great land in the north, but it is cold. The land of Shem is neither hot nor cold, but it is a blend, cold and heat. And according to Insights on the Scriptures, Volume 1, Japheth, it reads, historically, Japheth was the progenitor of the Aryan or Indo-European branch of the human family. They appear to have spread from the Caucasus eastward into Central Asia and westward through Asia Minor to the islands and coastlands of Europe and perhaps all the way to Spain. And according to Rabbi Eleazar, he blessed Shem and his sons black but comely, and he gave them the inhabitable earth. He blessed Japheth and his sons, they entirely white, and he gave them for an inheritance the desert and the fields. These are the inheritances with which he endowed them. And according to the Persian historian Tabri, quotes Ibn Abbas as saying, born to Noah were Shem, whose descendants' colors are a black complexion with a light brownish undertone and a dark blackish brown. Japheth, whose descendants are very fair-skinned and olive-skinned. And according to Bar Hebraicus, speaks of Noah dividing the world among his 3 sons, Shem the land of the browns, and Japheth the land of the reds. And according to the book, The History of the Messengers and the Kings, it reads, "The children of Shem settled in the center of the earth, which is between Satameh and the sea, and between Yemen and Syria. Allah made the prophets from them, revealed the books to them, made them beautiful, gave them a black complexion, luminous and free of blemish. The children of Japheth settled in Safwan, towards the north. They are light-skinned and very fair-skinned." It's quite clear that Japheth is the father of Indo-Europeans. Japheth settled the north, which perhaps is where Indo-European languages come from, and Japheth is associated with light skin. Shem is the father of Afro-Asiatic Semites. Shem settled the warm parts of the earth, and Shem is associated with dark skin. I do think it's a bit ironic how the parallels seem to match perfectly. As an example, if you look at indigenous skin tone maps, you can really see how it lines up. Most of the northern part of the world that Japheth would have settled is indeed light-skinned, and they typically are Indo-European or at least non-Semitic speakers. However, most of the southern parts of the world that Shem would have settled is darker skinned, and this is also typically where you see most Afro-Asiatic and Semitic speaking peoples. Because of this, since light skin is associated with Japheth, and since Proto-Indo-Europeans spread the light skin allele throughout Eurasia, it wouldn't really make sense for Shem, and more importantly early Afro-Asiatic Semitic populations, to have originally been white or light-skinned or European-looking. Shem and early Semitic populations likely remained dark-skinned early in their history, like their ancient Stone Age Natufian ancestors, until Semitic groups in the early Bronze Age encountered people who carried the light skin allele.